Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joe Wilson. I'm very grateful to be serving as the chairman of the Helsinki Commission, the United States Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. It's such an honor, and today we're so grateful to welcome extraordinary individuals here. It's just so inspiring to see the individuals here who are testifying, and also to look out and see so many incredible people who make a difference for freedom and democracy around the world who are observing and participating. We're having a hearing today on eyewitness accounts, Ukrainian children and adult civilians abducted by Russia. As we begin, our colleagues, we've got so many different meetings. We'll be having members in and out. I'm grateful that we begin right away with Congressman Mark Vesey of Texas. We're so happy for his service. As we begin, almost 2 years ago, since war criminal Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, war criminal Putin continues his war of aggression against Ukraine. Today, we have a rare opportunity to hear directly from some of the youngest victims of this war, several teenagers who have been rescued from Russian custody. We will also see video testimony from an adult survivor. The war criminal Putin's abduction of thousands of Ukrainian children and adult civilians as part of the war on Ukraine calls for the urgent U.S. and international action and support. And we've seen it come together. It's extraordinary to see, in my lifetime, to see Finland and Sweden now part of NATO. That couldn't possibly be what was anticipated, but isn't it exciting to see Europe come together? Russia has been transferring Ukrainian children to Russia or Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine and forcibly Russifying them in an apparent strategy to erase their identity. This is a war crime that I believe amounts to genocide under the 1948 Genocide Convention. It is also horribly reminiscent of war crimes committed during World War II, when Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, illegally abducted 200,000 Polish children, as well as an unknown number of children of other ethnicities to Nazi-occupied Germany for forced Germanization, a crime that was tried at Nuremberg, Germany. The Nuremberg trials set the basis for much of the international law and structure that will be used to hold complicit Russians accountable for the crimes it is committing in Ukraine. In 3 weeks, the U.S. Helsinki Commission will be holding a hearing there at the courtroom in Nuremberg, courtroom 600, the very room where those trials of war criminals took place in the 1940s. I can't think of a more symbolic courtroom to discuss how best to hold the elite of Russia and war criminal Putin accountable for the war crimes being committed today. Americans in the past have cherished our fondness for the people of Russia, especially many Russians who have been so successful across America. And I cherish my visits to Chelyabinsk, Novosibirsk, to Tomsk, St. Petersburg, Moscow, where I met so many wonderful people, and it's just so sad to me to see the government that they're enduring today. Information on another crime has been recently increasingly exposed. Russia has abducted thousands of adult civilians, people who have no connection to the military, who have been detained, transferred to Russian prisons, or used by Russian military for forced labor in contravention of international law. Some were fleeing their destroyed towns. Some were simply going out after their daily business. America has enthusiastically, in the past, adopted Russian literature, art, music, architecture, and historic culture. There has been media reports that many of the innocent civilians have been tortured during inhuman filtration of operations. And again, this is in contravention to America's appreciation of the people of Russia. My colleague Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas has introduced, and I'm co-sponsoring, the Alexander Ivanov Act of 2023, which is dedicated to the Ukrainian children who have suffered during Russia's war of aggression. Democrats and Republicans are united for the children of the people of Ukraine. And I'd like to point out that, indeed, Alexander, we had the opportunity to meet his grandmother, who was driving a car through Bucha, and Russian soldiers, without any provocation, simply murdered her grandson in the front seat of the car. This should never be forgotten, and it could happen in any country, and it must be deterred in the future. The provisions we have are stepping up sanctions against all individuals responsible for the forced transfer and russification of Ukrainian children, and for human trafficking of Ukrainian children and refugees, supporting the establishment of a centralized database entry of missing children, increasing U.S. support for programs to treat Ukrainian children for the trauma that they have experienced due to war. Before I give the floor to my colleagues, I would like to recognize the incredible ambassador from Ukraine, and that is Oksana Markarova, for her welcoming remarks. And prior to the post, Oksana has served as the first Deputy Minister of Ukraine's Ministry of Finance. Ambassador Markarova has become a hero for the Ukrainian children and for the working to regain the rightful territorial integrity of Ukraine, as should always be remembered, pledged by the Minsk Agreement, which has been violated by war criminal Putin, who cannot be trusted, obviously, in negotiations. Ambassador Markarova.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for your kind words. Dear Chairman, dear members of the Helsinki Commission, ladies and gentlemen, dear Rostislav, Denis, and Ksenia, it's an honor to be here with our Commissioner Lubinets and all the experts on this very important hearing on Ukrainian children and adult civilians abducted by Russia. Let me first start by thanking the Commission. Chairman, to you, to every member, and to all the team of the Commission for not only being one of the most influential and authoritative bipartisan groups, but also fighting and your leadership in supporting Ukraine and drawing attention of other members of Congress to this fight and why it is so important for us not only to win, but to defend everyone and to restore justice, not just for Ukraine, but for all of us. I also would like to thank Rostislav, Denis, and Ksenia, who are with us today. They will speak, of course, telling their stories, but they will also speak not only on behalf of themselves. They will represent a dozen of thousands of Ukrainian kids, or even more, kids who need and deserve justice, who need possibility to return home. They will represent here those kids, and they will represent here our Ukrainian future. And it's our obligation as adults, as Christians, as human beings, to bring them back and to do everything possible to bring all of them back. Russia's crimes against Ukrainian children, Chairman, which has been committed by Russia since the illegal occupation of Crimea in 2014, is not something accidental. It's a well-organized effort within the state system of Russia. Various entities and individuals, from Putin, the war criminal Putin, and to those carrying out of these criminal orders, are engaging in this crime. And it was confirmed by the International Criminal Court that issued lifelong arrest warrant against President Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova. We don't know how many of our children have been abducted. We hear Russians bragging about 700,000 children. We know that our authorities already registered more than 19,000. But the matter of the fact, until we liberate all Ukraine, until we win this war, we will not know how many of our children and our civilians have been abducted or killed. And we need to do it as soon as possible, because behind these officially confirmed numbers are people's stories. Behind this are children who are not only abducted but indoctrinated in Russia, who are put for speedy adoptions into Russian families, even those who have families in Ukraine. They are being tortured, they are being held in horrible conditions, in addition to being abducted to a foreign country and not being able to return home. Russia's arguments about humanitarian purpose of this deportation is just a blatant lie, and I just want to say it and will say it everywhere, because this is a criminal action on the part of Russians. And Chairman, as you said, abduction of Ukrainian children is a genocide against Ukrainian people. Just a few days ago, Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe adopted a resolution on the situation of Ukrainian children, urging all EU members to recognize Russia's abduction as a genocide of Ukrainian people. And it's our moral obligation and common responsibility, and I'm sure our American friends will stand firmly with us in doing all the possible in order to return them and punish Russian authorities for these crimes. So please listen carefully to the stories. These stories that will tell you the horrible experiences, but also, I hope, will touch your hearts and will ask everyone to do everything possible to return all the kids back home. Now, there is one thing that we all need to do in order to be able to return them home. And this week, the following week, is very critical for this. In order to return all the kids home and defend all Ukrainians and defend peace and get to lasting and just peace, we have to win. And in order to win, we have to stay the course. And we can only stay the course if US will continue to firmly be with us. So the supplementary budget, which has been debated on the Hill for quite some time now, we pray, we work, and we really count on your support in voting for that supplementary budget as soon as possible so that Ukrainian defenders will have everything we need in order to liberate our land, in order to win, and in order to allow other Rostislavs, Denis, and Ksenias to come back home safely and sooner. God bless America. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And indeed, what a tireless individual you are. We appreciate, in fact, as proof of that, she's going to run off. She's got so many meetings. And the reason that she has so many meetings is there's such strong support in America for the people of Ukraine. And so, and I've had the wonderful opportunity the last month to travel across my home state of South Carolina, Texas, also California, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Washington, D.C., and everywhere I go, I see the Ukrainian flag, and I was very fortunate at number 10 Downing Street in London to see, indeed, the Ukrainian flag being flown proudly across the British capital of London. And so over and over again, there's such unity and support of the people and just affection and love for the people of Ukraine. Thank you. I'm very grateful that my co-chair is here, Steve Cohen from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Wilson. I want to say how proud I am to be here with this distinguished panel of witnesses, from our Ambassador Markarova, who has been impressing everybody in Washington and representing her country in such an admirable way, Prosecutor General Kostin, who's done similar duties and performances, and Ukrainian President and Commissioner for Human Rights, Lubinets. And not last and no way least is our OSCE President, Pia Kalma, who I welcome to our hearing and appreciate your work. There are 3 children here who have been, I think, subjected to Russian interference and indoctrination and separation from home. Welcome. I hate that you had to experience that. You're not the first children we've had appear before this committee, though. Vladimir Kara-Murza, this very brave and noble Russian citizen who was went back to Russia after he was twice poisoned, feeling confident that the poisoning was done by Russians to try to take his life, and his life was in jeopardy, and people didn't think he'd survive. He went back to Russia, and he was immediately, I'd say within 4 weeks, arrested, quote-unquote tried, eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was in solitary confinement in Siberia. His children came and testified before us, and they did a marvelous job. He's recently been known to, he's just disappeared. He's off the radar, just like Navalny was. So he's being transferred from isolation in a Siberian prison. What's worse? What's the next level? Maybe where Navalny is, which is north of the Arctic. It's a terrible situation, but I appreciate your testifying, and we look forward to your testimony. I know it's been discussed already about the fact that taking of children is part of a genocide. And I'm not going to go through that entirely, but we have a bill to declare what Russia's done a genocide. Why we haven't been able to pass it for different reasons is beyond me, because it's obvious they've met every criteria, and it should be declared a genocide, and we should be taking actions. The Repo Act, which is being acted on in the Senate, will give us opportunity to get monies, even if we have the recalcitrance of our Speaker. I regret, Mr. Wilson, my chair, is a good supporter of Ukraine. And there are other Republicans that are good supporters of Ukraine. I think Senator Wicker is. But in the House, we've got a speaker who claims to be supportive of Ukraine, claims to be supportive of Israel, but will not allow them to come up for votes unless we give him a bill or that he pins to the word on the border, which is not going to happen, and he knows that. And the reason I suspect is one of two. They both go back to one source, one bully, Donald Trump. It's either because he's angry at Zelensky for not giving him dirt on Hunter Biden in return for defense aid that Zelensky asked for, and that resulted in the impeachment of Trump, or it's because Donald Trump is responding to Vladimir Putin, who helped him in both his 2016 and his 2020 election, and who he wants to have on his team in 2024. It is a crying shame, and I hate that I say this to people in Europe who are fellow NATO members, that our government right now in the House is stymied because of Vladimir Putin. He has got to Trump, and they are friends, and he's interfered in our elections, and Trump wants him to interfere again, or else Trump goes to prison. So the world is pretty chaos. We've got Netanyahu afraid to go to prison. We've got Trump afraid to go to prison, but holding on to power, regardless of what happens in Gaza, regardless of what happens in Ukraine. So that's where we are. We want to hope that we can get children rescued, and we hope that we can recognize what Russia has done as a genocide. Mr. Wilson always makes clear that in every address he makes that Putin is evil, he's a monster, and what else do you say about him?
War criminal. War criminal.
War criminal. You don't say short-fingered Bulgarian. No. That's the other guy. But he says a lot, and he's all those things and more. Welcome, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. And good people in our party and in Congress can disagree. I just really appreciate that President Donald Trump provided Javelin missiles to Ukraine. He wanted to avoid what occurred. He put American troops in Poland, which is absolutely historic. That's inconceivable to take such strong action to protect the people of Poland, Ukraine, and ultimately also the Baltic republics. And then he also was tried very significantly to convince Germany that Nord Stream 2 was not in the interest of Europe and actually was beneficial to war criminal Putin. So, but good people can disagree, but hey, actually we agree about 90%, which is not bad. And so, and then as proof that we agree, I think I'm going to now refer to another one of my Democrat colleagues, because hey, we've traveled together. He and I have been to Narva and Estonia. We have seen the extraordinary opportunities created by the liberation of the Baltic republics, and one day we hope, indeed, working together, the liberation of and territorial integrity of the people of Ukraine. Congressman Mark Vesey, all the way from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and so good to be here and important to be here to talk about Russia's continued unlawful invasion of Ukraine. And I want to thank our panelists for being here. I got to meet with President Kama yesterday very briefly. But it's really remarkable to me, and I think should be startling to a lot of people, the similarities that I think are striking between the Russians and Hamas and what they're doing in order to try to undermine democracy in the world. As you know, Russia has always, probably for the last 100+ years, used anti-Semitism to try and spread false propaganda and misinformation, and they're doing that now. You've seen them refer to the term Nazi many times, repeatedly, over and over, using the term incorrectly. And if we're serious about fighting anti-Semitism in the Middle East, we ought to also be serious about making sure that we do everything we can to tamp down and eliminate anti-Semitism in Europe too, which is what is happening with the unlawful invasion of Ukraine. I think that's really important. Also, I think that even more sad, of course, is what's happening to our children. We know that there are still children that are in captivity by Hamas in Gaza that need to be released, and also that the Russians are doing the same thing, and it's harmful to children, it's harmful to their families. It is a truly a war crime, and there's no excuse for us to not be doing everything we can to stop it from happening in both places. We can't waste any more time. This is something that needs to be done today. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, because if you continue to come, if you continue to stay in the spotlight and continue to be questioned by this committee, by the Helsinki Commission, I think that it helps. Every little bit helps to keep this on the forefront of the American public. It's just because it's not being talked about as much as it was in the early days of the unlawful invasion doesn't mean that the seriousness is not just as important, and probably now it's probably even more serious than it was when it first occurred. We need to help Ukraine now. It absolutely cannot wait. And not only is it important for Ukraine, it's important for democracy in all of Europe, and perhaps even the world. But we know how quickly this could spread to other European countries and neighbors if we did not act with all immediacy and do something today. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for calling this hearing. I look forward to hearing the questions and knowing how we can be helpful, because you do have friends in both parties here. And we really do want to do the right thing, and as quickly as we possibly can. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Beasley. And again, you can see it's remarkable in the partisan environment we have today. There's one thing: Republicans and Democrats are united with love and affection for the people of Ukraine, for the OSCE capabilities. And we're just so grateful to have you here, all of you here today. And Ambassador, thank you for being here. And just God bless your service, and God bless the people of Ukraine. Thank you. And we now will proceed to introduce the first panel. And that is, first we have the remarkable and greatly appreciated President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the Honorable Pia Kelma. She is a member of the Parliament from Finland and was elected OSCE PA President at the 2023 annual session in Vancouver, Canada last summer. She has served as the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Special Representative on Central Asia and as Special Representative on Civil Society Engagement. President Kelma is a champion for freedom and democracy. We will then hear from Ukraine's Prosecutor General, Mr. Andrei Kostin, via a pre-recorded video. Mr. Kostin was appointed to the post in 2022. Prior to that, he served as a member of Ukraine's parliament. He is a lawyer and in private practice before his government service. Next, we will watch a video testimony from an adult civilian who was abducted by Russia. And then we will hear from Mr. Dmitry Lvova-Belova, and the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, and he was appointed commissioner in July 2022. He is a member of the Ukrainian Parliament and serves as chairman of the Parliamentary Commission on Human Rights for Deoccupation and Reintegration of the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. And we will begin, of course, with Madam President.
Chairman Wilson, Ambassador Markarova, members of the Helsinki Commission, ladies and gentlemen. I've been following with great concern the multitude of ways in which Russian attacks have been continued against Ukraine in the past 2 years, not only on the front line, but also through cultural warfare. President Putin's efforts appear aimed at completely destroying the Ukrainian identity. He has resorted even to deporting and brainwashing Ukrainian children in so-called summer camps, one of which is located west of St. Petersburg, near the borders of my own country, Finland. Such abuses underline the need for us all to make great efforts to bring more attention to the brutal tactics of Russia in this war and the consequences, particularly on children and civilians. Today's focus on abductions, particularly of children, may represent Russia's hybrid warfare at its worst. I therefore want to thank the Chairman and the Helsinki Commission for organizing this important event, and I particularly want to applaud the strength of those that survived this ordeal. Thank you for sharing your story with us and the world. As a representative of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, I am proud to present an OSCE voice here. Allow me to briefly cite the most recent OSCE Moscow Mechanism report. Ukraine and the Russian Federation concur in that a large number of Ukrainian children have been, over the past months or years, relocated from their homes either to the Ukrainian regions under the temporary occupation of the Russian Federation or to the territory of the Russian Federation. This fact is therefore well established and uncontested. You may ask why a report like this was necessary, as the facts of the matter now seem quite clear. We have witnesses here today, but just a year or two ago, such an unethical act was simply beyond what most of us had thought possible. Simply to face reality, Russia's actions have required us all to change our thinking about what is possible. We are meeting in a building dedicated to crafting laws. So perhaps I should be focused on the legalities of these uncontested facts. However, the fact that Russia's acts are criminal somehow pales in comparison to how fundamentally wrong and offensive they are at an ethical and human level. I'm a lawmaker, but in the face of such brutality, it is hard to respond as anything other than a human. That being said, I lead an organization that has been remarkably effective in helping to gather political support for Ukraine. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly was a leading voice from 2014 in calling out Russia for breaching so many of its basic security and human rights commitments. Allow me to highlight just a few of the elements related to today's hearing that were prominent in our latest declaration, adopted this past July in Vancouver. At that time, we adopted several resolutions dedicated specifically to this topic. Among other things, OSCE parliamentarians, first of all, made it abundantly clear that we recognize the abduction of Ukrainian children as an act of genocide. We called for sanctions on and accountability of the Russian officials responsible for these horrid acts. We specified a range of steps to ensure the mechanisms that are in place for safe repatriation, from appropriate training for law enforcement to educational needs. We called on OSCE countries to provide all necessary assistance, including logistical and financial support, to Ukraine to support its multi-agency efforts to collect and verify data on all children who have been abducted and to support Ukraine's efforts to locate the children. Let me also highlight the need for OSCE parliaments to inspire one another to adopt relevant anti-trafficking legislation to punish those responsible for these crimes. I thank Congressman Chris Smith, who also serves as the OSCE's Special Representative on Human Trafficking Issues, for his leadership on this topic. Chairman Wilson, more broadly, I take this opportunity to remind that the OSCE has also created a special parliamentary support team for Ukraine, enabling focused work that can be of real help to the Ukrainian people. This support team was established in response to and in dialogue with the Ukrainian delegation to our assembly, with a clear intention of making sure that our work meets the actual needs of Ukraine. It was with this in mind that I appointed two chairs to lead this work alongside me, Representative Wilson of this commission and Mikita Poturayev from Ukraine. While I prefer not to prejudge the work being done, the parliamentary support team has already demonstrated itself to be a useful forum for exchanges on innovative ways that parliaments and governments around the world can support Ukraine. Whether it relates to working with local government authorities in different countries to identify resources that can be sent to support Ukrainian localities, or finding innovative ways to ensure effective sanctions against Russian perpetrators, we are working for targeted and effective work. Commissioner Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, the needs of the Ukrainian people at this time are so immense. The brutality facing the Ukrainian people is truly frightening. But we cannot allow ourselves to be cowed. We must support our Ukrainian brothers and sisters and the Ukrainian children who have been victimized in such a despicable manner by the Russian invaders. The resounding support for Ukraine of parliamentarians from across the OSCE region is evident every time that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly gathers. We will continue this work at the international level, and I want to thank the Helsinki Commission for so effectively bringing attention to these critical matters here in the United States Congress. Next week, together with other members of this support team, I will be traveling to Kyiv to continue our work there. Issues related to child and civilian protection will be high on our agenda. Thank you.
Madam President, thank you very much. And as you cite political support, I want to commend you, your strong support, the courage of the people of Finland, how inspiring. And so over and over again, you've made a difference. And I wish you well on the visit to Kyiv. I have had the privilege of visiting several times, and every time it is so inspiring to see the courage of the people of Ukraine, because, hey, I sincerely believe the people of Ukraine will be victorious in having territorial integrity. It's to the benefit, obviously, of the people of Ukraine, but I believe it's to the benefit of the people of Russia, too. So we should be working in every way. With that, I now will be referring to the Prosecutor General, Andrei Kostin, via pre-recorded video.
Chairman Wilson, Co-Chairman Cardin, respectful members of the Commission, thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today. At the outset, I wish to convey my sincere gratitude to the Congress, to the Helsinki Commission specifically, which has used its unique mandate to ensure so many different Ukrainian voices have had the opportunity to share what we face and discuss what can be done. To the administration, which has done important work to muster the collective will of the alliance. And of course to American people for their unwavering support and continuous assistance to the people of Ukraine. Today's hearing is dedicated to the protection of Ukrainian children and other civilians abducted by Russia. Both of these crimes are committed in pursuance of Russia's state policy to deny the very existence of Ukrainian identity and statehood, and both rely heavily on violence and terror in their execution. This time, however, those who design and enact these policies cannot be allowed to evade accountability, to conduct their atrocities in silence. Let me start with the forced transfer and deportation of Ukrainian children. First, it needs to be stressed from the outset that the practice of forced displacement of Ukrainian children to Russia dates back to 2014, beginning with the occupation and annexation of Crimea and the occupation of the eastern regions of Ukraine by Russia. Second, the abduction of children is a well-thought-out plan with the direct involvement of Russian government authorities at the highest political level, as evidenced from the ICC arrest warrants against President Putin and Child Commissioner Lvova-Belova. Russia has also adopted several pieces of legislation to simplify the change of nationality of Ukrainian children, because stripping them of their Ukrainian citizenship is a step preceding adoption procedures, and because this step further complicates the tracing and identification of the forcibly transferred children. Simply put, they are never meant to be found. Third, the transfer of Ukrainian children from occupied territories is not justified by safety or medical reasons, nor it is intended to be a temporary nature. As the UN Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine has stressed, Russia's legislative and policy measures are indicative of a strategy to accommodate Ukrainian children in Russia for a longer term or permanently. Therefore, we firmly believe that the forced transfer and deportation of up to 20,000 documented Ukrainian children to Russia not only amounts to war crimes, but also to the crimes against humanity. Needless to say, Russia denies its wrongdoing, as evidenced in public statements and interviews, including the latest hearing at the UN Child Committee from the 24th of January, just days ago. Russia also uses its abduction of Ukrainian children to make many Russians complicit to the state policy of genocide. For us, for all Ukrainians, none of this is a fact-finding exercise, some tabletop discussion to define what the crime is. We are talking about the next generation of Ukrainians. We are talking about the fate of each and every child, some being as young as 1 year old, who will grow up not knowing who they are. Every day that passes is a list of more crimes against each individual. Adoption, followed by indoctrination, the imposition of new culture and language on children, stripping them of their family stories and history, not only heightens their vulnerability, but explicitly deprives these children their identity and nationality. With only 388 children returned so far, 388 of 20,000, of likely far more, the safe and timely return of Ukrainian children remains our priority, as outlined in Ukraine's peace formula and in the Bring Kids Back UA action plan. In addition to tracing and identifying all the stolen children, there must be a multilateral cooperation to ensure the prosecution of the perpetrators, and the international community should impose stringent sanctions. Now let me also address the issue of civilians that are being arbitrarily detained but systematically tortured and ill-treated in the territories occupied by Russian armed forces. As temporarily occupied territories have been liberated, we have discovered numerous torture chambers, and we have documented people being collectively detained, abused, executed, and buried in mass graves. Torture chambers and places of illegal detention were discovered in all areas liberated from the occupiers. In total, 104 torture chambers were discovered in 8 regions of Ukraine. The highest number of them was registered in the Kharkiv region, 25 torture chambers, 18 in the Zaporizhia region, and 11 in the Kherson region. In the Kharkiv region alone, we have more than 220 investigations with 793 identified victims. The same is happening in Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and other regions during every day that they remain under Russian occupation. According to our estimates, at least 16,000 Ukrainian civilians are detained in occupied territories without any grounds provided under international humanitarian law. We fear that torture chambers continue to exist in other occupied territories. It is one component of the policy of persecution planned and implemented by Russia against Ukrainians, a policy which aims to intimidate and control the local civilian population. Russian armed forces and affiliated armed groups systematically target activists, volunteers, journalists, officials and employees of local safe government bodies, educators, religious figures, and cultural figures who resisted the Russian invasion in a peaceful manner. In parallel to the investigation and prosecution of such cases, we need to secure the release and repatriation of those that have been unlawfully confined and/or tortured. Every Ukrainian has a family story from the past of deportation, detention, disappearance, separation. These stories are painful, often so painful that they aren't really shared. They are carried in silence for decades, as if voicing them would make other members of the family targets for future oppression. Too many Ukrainian families already have the same stories from the present day. But these new stories, at least, we can remedy, and we can vow to do more to prevent the expansion of their numbers. Ukraine will do everything in our capacity to protect Ukrainian children and civilians. We will not rest until all our people are returned. Russia wants to steal our future, but we will never let this succeed on the battlefield, in our cities, in our families. But we will need support and assistance from our friends and allies to act in a timely and efficient manner. Thank you for your attention.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are so grateful to have had the participation by the Prosecutor General Andrei Kostin. And additionally, as we proceed, I want to welcome the newest member to the panel, Congresswoman Victoria Sparks. She herself is an indication of love and affection that we have for the people of Ukraine, and that she was born in the Ukraine and just has family. And hey, what a champion she is for freedom and democracy for the people of Ukraine. And just so inspiring to have Congresswoman Sparks of Indiana with us today. As we proceed, we now have a video from an adult civilian who was abducted by the forces of war criminal Putin.
Hello, I'm Alexander Korzun. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I was in the village of Fanevichi, where I stayed at my grandmother's house to do the chores while she was in hospital. On 25th of February, the Russian occupiers entered our village. We had no electricity and no mobile connection. My friend on a motorbike found the road to the Kiev water reservoir and got mobile connection there. Then I went there with him and called my parents and found out that people from our village were leaving for Kiev with assistance from the Red Cross. On the 21st of March, I took a puppy that I found during the occupation with me.
якого знайшов під час окупації.
And we went to the village of Glibivka through the forest on a motorbike.
На мотоциклі.
We arrived at the Russian security checkpoint and we told them that we were civilians. We wanted to get to the neighboring village. We said we were going to visit our relatives. They said, yes, okay. Then they took my puppy away from me and took our documents to check. After checking the documents, they told us that we shall proceed to the checkpoint. And then they blindfolded us and tied our hands and told us that we were detained until they do the additional check of the information. They also said that we would be held in a punishment cell. The punishment cell was a former grocery store. It was completely looted and the windows were broken. They made us sit on some water barrels and told us to wait. It was very cold there. We waited until 6 o'clock in the evening for them to come to us. They put us in an armored vehicle and told us that if we moved, they would kill us. We were traveling for about 10 minutes. Then they took us out of the vehicles, put us on our knees, and switched the guns into the automatic mode. We thought that our lives had come to an end. I said goodbye to my friend. They hit us in the back of our heads with the gun stock and told us to keep quiet. Then they told us to stand up. One soldier grabbed me by the shoulder and my jacket, and while dragging me, he was shouting, "You are teenage Nazis, you are getting Nazi mentality." And you simply have to be eradicated. We were brought to a checkpoint. Then they stepped on my foot and started beating me in the chest, claiming that I was a soldier. I explained that I was an innocent civilian. I was a college student. They didn't believe us and took us to a room at the Viknaland factory. We were interrogated in a completely different way. There were 3 soldiers for each detainee. They beat us in the kidneys and chest. I told them that I was 18 years old and I could not be a soldier, that I was just a student. They beat us for about 20 minutes and then they took us to another room that looked like a garage. The room size was about 6 by 7 meters. When we got there, there were already 24 people there. There already were the representatives of the Red Cross, among them a woman, a driver, and 2 other assistants they were also from the Red Cross. There were also women there, 2 women, and the rest were civilians, ordinary people who were just trying to catch a mobile connection, but Russian occupiers took them away. And we were held in very poor sanitary conditions. Women and men had to use the same toilet, which was a barrel, next to which, about a half a meter away, there was another one where they brought food, and we had to eat at this place. The highest number of people held there at the same time was 41, and there were only 2 spoons for all of us to use. They brought us borscht, which contained unpeeled potatoes, unpeeled beetroot, and someone's hair. They were laughing that their dogs eat better. Sometimes they would drink alcohol, and when they got bored, they would take the person they disliked the most and beat this person for hours. I saw them beating a civilian from Dimir village. The man was about 50 years old, and 3 soldiers were beating him. Firstly, they tortured him with electroshocks for about half an hour, and then they beat him with a rubber hose for another half an hour. And they never provide us with any medicine. On 25th of March at 6 p.m., the Ukrainian armed forces started shelling Russian positions with artillery, and the battle lasted for about 3 hours. At 9 p.m., the occupiers came out and said, "Don't worry," and that they will come back to take us. The next morning, about 5 a.m., we heard that vehicles were moving, and they started heading away towards Ivankiv, away from the settlements of Dimir and Demidiv. They didn't take anyone with them, they just closed the door tighter. Around 8 a.m., a security guard who stayed at the factory during the occupation came to us. He knew that there were civilians in the premises somewhere in the factory, and he came to the door and opened the garage, so we were released, and that's how everyone got released.
We're so grateful for the courage of the individual who just spoke, and it truly is indicative of the people of Ukraine, and so inspiring, and gives us all inspiration. And then to know that there are such qualified individuals is Dmitry Lubinets, indeed the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson, distinguished participants, dear international partners. To restore justice and peace, the President of Ukraine presented the peace formula. As the Ombudsman of Ukraine, I am responsible for point number 4, the return of all deportees and prisoners, Ukrainian children, civilian hostages, and prisoners of war. Russia has been deported Ukrainian children since 2014. You know, dear colleagues, the first child that was deported, it was a child from Ukrainian Crimea, after the deportation by Russian Federation in 2014. Currently, 19,546 children have been deported by Russia. This is the confirmed number, but it could be much higher. The problem is, for confirmation, we need to get information from Russian side. But how we can do it if Russia never give us any information of Ukrainian children? The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for 2 perpetrators of the deportation. That is not enough. Thousands of Russians took participation on this illegal mechanism of deportation of Ukrainian children. For example, Sergei Mironov. He is a member of Russian parliament. He is a leader of one of the political party of Russian Federation. He adopted and kidnapped a Ukrainian girl from Kherson, Margarita Prokopenko. We tried to find any information about this Ukrainian girl, but we can't. And then we understood why. Because he changed the name and surname of this girl. Now, officially, in Russian Federation, she is Marina Mironova. How I can confirm that this is the Ukrainian girl? The leader of this political party will do everything to block this information. This already grounds for issuing another arrest warrants, and we are waiting for them. Russians are trying to erase the identity of Ukrainian children. Children are being re-educated and subject to psychological pressure. They are being illegally passportized. And in Russian territory and on the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, Ukrainian children must be members of youth military organizations. This is the new mechanism of grow up of new generation of Russian army. You must be sure, dear colleagues, that after 10 years, Russia will use these Ukrainian children for new aggression against another country. Russia is doing everything to prevent children from returning to Ukraine. It hides them, moves them, changes their personal data. Russia is doing this deliberately. The distance makes it difficult to find, identify, and return children. If every day, dear colleagues, we will return one child to Ukraine from Russian territory, we need 55 years. We don't have this time. We must to actively do it now. We need to have new initiatives. At the initiative of Canada, for example, we created the International Coalition of Countries for the Return of Ukrainian Children, and we are looking for new mechanisms and partners to bring our kids back to Ukraine. Russia has been abducted and illegally convicting civilian hostages since 2014. On the territory of the Russian Federation and the temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine, about 28,000 people are considered missing under special circumstances and unlawfully deprived of their liberty as a result of Russia's armed aggression against Ukraine. Civilians are subjected to psychological, sexual, and physical violence. They are being forcibly passportized and mobilized. There must be an unconditional release of civilians held by Russia. This is a new mechanism of pressure to Ukrainian people who still live on temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. And again, according to Geneva Conventions, Russians can't hold on places of detention civilian population, but Russia did it and continue to do. 90 of Ukrainian civilian hostages in Russia are subjected to torture. This is the information from official reports of Special Rapporteur of United Nations organization. The recognizing of Russians' actions in Ukraine as a crime of genocide is needed for all of us. You know, genocide as a war crime has 5 elements. One of them is forcibly transferring children from one ethnic group to another. That this is exactly did and continue to do Russian Federation. We appreciate of the leadership of the United States of America, and we need your assistance to restoration of the rights of Ukrainians. We need obtaining list of deported children, verification of data of all of them, in particular with the help of OSCE, establishment of rehabilitation centers for returning children, associated in ensuring the ICRC access to all Ukrainian children and civilian hostages, support Ukraine and the fight against the aggressor, support the Ukrainian peace formula. And dear Chairman, you mentioned that you with your colleague on the 90% agreed together. I supposed that on the case of supporting Ukraine, supporting Ukrainian children, you will be always together on 100%. And we're still waiting for your new wave of assistance to our country. We need it. Every day, Russian Federation bombed the whole territory of Ukraine, continued deports, kidnaps Ukrainian children, rapes Ukrainian women and men. Please, we need your assistance to stop this aggression. Thank you very much.
And Commissioner, you're actually ahead of the curve. When you say that we agree universally, we do. And as proof, we have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee, who has truly been such a champion for Ukrainian children, and again, showing bipartisan support. Congresswoman Lee.
Mr. Chairman, we couldn't have done this without making sure that there were all of us who were outraged at the sheer violence and insensitivity and murderous attitude and selfishness that has been evidenced by this war against Ukraine and the actions of Russia. I'm grateful to my other chairman, Chairman Steve Cohen, who has supported me in these efforts. Ms. Sparks and Senator, it is an honor to be here with each and every one of you. We were in Lithuania on February 24th, 2022, in the midst of this horrific action dealing with the beginning of the war. Disgustingly, Russia propaganda portrays its adoption of Ukrainian children as an art of generosity. But as I indicated, we were in the region. And of course, we can see the results. Mr. Chairman, as of January 2024, there are recorded 3.7 million internally displaced people in Ukraine, 6.3 million refugees from Ukraine globally, 14.6 million Ukrainian people in need of humanitarian assistance. The unjust and brutal war has put millions of Ukrainian women and children at risk of trafficking. Millions of children have been deprived of their education and are experiencing trauma. And according to a report by Yale University, more than 6,000 children today, and probably more, are in custody in Russia. According to the report by Yale University Research, at least this number of children are ages 4 months to 17 years, and they've been held at camps and other facilities within the Russian-occupied Crimea and maintained Russia since Russia's full-scale invasion began. There are at least 43 camps and facilities where the Russian government has interned Ukrainian children, and we should use that word, interned. And among the camps identified by Yale HRL, at least 32, 78% of the camps seem to be engaged in organized re-education, the genocide of the mind initiatives that subject Ukrainian children to Russian-focused educational, cultural, patriotic, and or military teachings. They want them to completely ignore their heritage, their family, their origins, their love and knowledge of Ukraine, their family, and become totally immersed in the present brutality of Russia against their own fellow countrymen. In Russian custody, Ukrainian children are subjected to re-education programs meant to Russify them, told that their parents no longer want them, and convinced that their future is in Russia. How painful it is for little minds to be told that you are in essence a throwaway, that you're not needed or wanted anymore. Disgustingly, Russian propaganda portrays its adoption of Ukrainian children as an act of generosity that gives new homes to helpless orphans. Russian state media shows local officials hugging and kissing newly arrived Ukrainian children and handing them Russian passports. Many of these children are not orphans at all. There are crying parents and grandmothers, aunts and uncles waiting in Ukraine to try and receive their children back. Further, Ukraine's children are suffering serious injury and trauma due to Russia's genocidal war on Ukraine. And when they came to the country, to Russia, they were injured and they did not get the proper medical care. According to the United Nations, almost 2/3 of the country's children have been displaced. Thousands have been injured, and although UNICEF has said more than 1,000 children have been killed, that number is likely much, much higher, as there is no reliable way to verify how many civilians have been killed in the most decimated areas of Ukraine. Mariupol, where just as one example, Russian forces bombed a theater housing hundreds of civilians despite clear markings that children were present and young adults. And so we know that young adults and children have been in immediate danger. They have witnessed unimaginable violence. Many of us remember seeing children sitting by the bodies of adults that we take to be their loved ones, their family members, where they were the only ones remaining alive, and they were there in the streets after the Russian soldiers had come through. They've experienced hunger and cold. And so in this regard, I would like to recognize the Ukrainian government's exceptional campaign to keep children linked to their schools by mobilizing the remote learning infrastructure built up during the COVID-19 pandemic. Children and their families need support. There are organizations on the ground that I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we will utilize our efforts to be able to help them psychologically with psychological treatment, art therapy, humanitarian aid, and for some, even new homes. We all need to support such programs. In response to this heartbreaking situation, I introduced a bill last September, and thank you and all the members here. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Cohen, for joining me, Smarts, for joining me, Mr. Veazey, in H.R. 5800, the Alexander Ivanov Act, alongside of other members. The chairman of this commission was an enthusiastic co-sponsor. He is my lead sponsor on this effort. And on February 26, 2022, this incident happened when Lila was driving from Kyiv, Ukraine, to the suburb of Bucha with her grandson, Alexander Ivanov, when Russian forces opened fire on their car, killing this young, beautiful grandson. Although wounded herself, Ms. Kolosov was able to drive to a medical clinic where her grandson was formally declared dead. Can you imagine the feeling? This act is dedicated to him, his family, and all the children and families who have experienced this brutality, suffering serious injury. His goal is to address their suffering, to take steps to protect the most vulnerable. And so in conclusion, this bill provides for direct sanctions to hold Russia responsible for its actions against the children of Ukraine, including directing the president to designate sanctions against those responsible for the transfer of Ukrainian children to Russia for their forced assimilation, adoption, or placement in a foster home, directing the president to deny visas to any individual playing a major role in facilitating the abduction of and separation, forced assimilation of Ukrainian children, and directing the president to designate sanctions on individuals or organizations responsible for human trafficking of Ukrainian refugees. We want the Secretary of State under this bill to be able to, as well, submit the appropriate congressional committees this information to be able to help rebuild this family of children and to be able to provide them with the support so that they might regain, those who live, their rightful place in Ukraine. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for providing me this time. I urge our colleagues in this very important hearing, which you have committed to having, very important hearing, to recognize that the most precious resource we have are our children. Let us save them, let us fight for them, and let us be the victors for their new life as they turn it around in Ukraine, even as it is war-torn. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And we could tell the world there's love and affection for the people of Ukraine, but you can see it by both political parties here of the House. And then as an indication of how significant this is, we're so grateful to have Senator Richard Blumenthal, all the way from Connecticut, again, in the U.S. Senate, such bipartisan support and love and affection for the people of Ukraine. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson, and thank you to you and Representative Cohn for organizing this very, very significant hearing. And I will just say briefly, because the Congresswoman has summarized it so well, the scale of these atrocities is absolutely horrifying. The trafficking of children and women, 20,000 cases of children alone, is on a scale and magnitude that reminds us of the worst war crimes of World War II. We might have thought that these kinds of crimes against humanity ended with the last century, but they have been repeated by Vladimir Putin in a frequency and severity that simply boggles the mind and staggers the heart. And I cannot say how strongly I sympathize with the people of Ukraine, how fervently I support the effort to hold Russia accountable, but most important, to regain those children and give them the care that they need, because the kinds of treatment they have suffered is truly inhumane, beyond human recognition. And so I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling attention, giving me this time to speak. It is a busy day here, so I apologize that I probably won't be able to stay, but I wanted to be here to say thank you, to express my appreciation to the witnesses, to all of the people who have come here from Ukraine, the ambassador from Ukraine. I look forward to visiting Ukraine again, as I've done 4 times already in the last couple of years. And it is a bipartisan cause. It is a cause that should bring us together, and it reminds us of the need for humanitarian aid, not just military aid, but also humanitarian aid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Richard Blumenthal, and we appreciate your being here today. And we will now proceed to questions. And what occurs is that each member will have 5 minutes to ask questions. It will be strictly enforced by watching the clock. And but we strictly enforced, and so that we can get everybody to have an opportunity to participate. And with that, indeed, I'd like to begin to reiterate what Senator Blumenthal said, and that is the scale of atrocities is just unimaginable, particularly when we never thought there would be another land war in Europe. But there is something that can be done that could be a deterrent in the future. And this will be, I believe, the first war covered by cell phone, which is going to be documented virtually live. And so the people of Ukraine are so talented and capable of documenting the date, time, place, the people, and every troop that is conducting the atrocity can be identified, and the chain of command can be identified, and there will be repercussions against the perpetrators of atrocities. And Commissioner Libanets, how is the government of Ukraine registering reports of children believed to have been taken to Russia, and what provisions are you making for the family reunification in the future?
I can answer, yeah? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for question, Chairman Wilson. I mentioned that the hardest task for us is confirmation. When we use number of Ukrainian children that's deported by Russian Federation, 19,546, it means that we know from which Ukrainian cities these children and where they now on Russian territory. Officially, we can't receive any information. For example, I sent several letters to international organizations, first of all, United Nations organization, to ask Russian Federation where is our children, Ukrainian, in which conditions they are living now, what the situation with their parents, what the situations of children that don't have parents, orphans children. And you know, I didn't get any answer from any international organization. Yeah, we used OSCE system. We have cooperation with different countries. And on these ways, we confirmed this number. But I know that the number of children that's deported by Russian Federation much more bigger. When we will, I don't know, maybe create new mechanism of confirmation, it will be new number. So this is the question number one, task number one for us. And the second, sorry, what we provide rehabilitation?
To provide for unification and planning.
How we return Ukrainian children. Yeah. For today, we returned 518 Ukrainian children, 388 children who were deported exactly to Russian territory. We did it with some of our partners. The 3 last groups we returned in participation of UNICEF. We have different initiatives from our partners, for example, from Vatican. And when we received the signals from our partners that Russians are ready to return Ukrainian children, we did it. I can mention you one example. Veronika Vlasova, she is 14 years old. She is from Kharkiv region. Her mother is military, and she was deported by Russian Federation to Belgorod. I several months tried to return this Ukrainian girl to Ukraine without any success. Then we, I mean Ukraine, with our partners organized special meeting, Council of Security of United Nations, format area. And I had a speech on this meeting, and after me had a speech this mother. And she said simple words that, look at me, I'm simple mother, and I can't to talk with my child, 1.5 years. Please, if someone can push the Russian side, please do it, and to return my child back.
Okay.
I don't know, the last, but the last.
In line with that, I'd like to ask President Kalma, because I've only got 20 seconds. What more can be done to recover the children? And we have such a leader, President Kalma. What more can be done, President?
Thank you, President Wilson, Chairman Wilson. I thank you for that question. Being a president of an international organization, I of course call for more international cooperation, and I believe it was a Dutch delegation to the Council of Europe that has suggested creating a DNA data bank for those children that have been abducted from Ukraine and deported to Russia. I don't know which phase creation of this kind of data bank is, but I think it sounds like a brilliant idea, because that way the children that have been abducted could be identified even years after that has happened. So I would really like to dig deeper into that, and next week when I will be heading for Ukraine, I will try to find more information about the proceedings related to that. Also, one other thing that where we can emphasize international cooperation is we should identify the places, the border crossing points where actually the children have been deported from Ukraine to Russia, which are the critical points, transport routes and so forth. So all of this calls for international cooperation and action, and I think the list can be continued, but these were just a few examples.
And Madam President, thank you for your leadership. And indeed, with technology, the people committing crimes today can be uncovered, and we can take action. And then we've got good people like Congressman Mark Vesey, who are going to also be working hard on this. Congressman Vesey.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and I want to thank all of the witnesses that are here today. And I wanted to ask Commissioner Lubinets, earlier this month, Putin signed a new decree to simplify the process of conferring Russian citizenship on Ukrainian children abducted from wartime Ukraine. In response, your office issued an official appeal to the ICC claiming that the decree served as further proof of Russia's crime against Ukraine. Can you expound on the legal actions you pursued to challenge and counteract this decree and the border issue of forced assimilation of Ukrainian children?
Thank you. You know, the previous question, that's after the Security Council meeting, the Ukrainian girl returned to Ukraine. This real mechanism. We need to have something concrete, effective, sanctions, but sanctions that can be resultive, effective. We need to have effective mechanism of pushing to Russian Federation, exactly to Putin, because to my mind, that the personal position of Putin, that Russians have to deport Ukrainian children. You know, the Putin signed 3 acts exactly. In 2022, 2 acts. The first, he created easily conditions for adoption by Russian families of Ukrainian children. It was in May 2022. The second, in December 2022, he signed a special act of recognizing of all Ukrainian children who live on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine as Russian children. And the third one, he signed it in this year for creating easier mechanism of passportization of Ukrainian children. So to my mind, we have seen the bright examples that the deportation of Ukrainian children at the position of Putin and the all main members of Russian Federation. So I think that the problem is that they are not feel that in any time they will be punishment on this. Punish is the main question. The arrest warrants for Putin against Putin and Lvova-Belova, it's not enough. We should to continue this work too.
Let me ask you this question also. I want you to contemplate the worst case scenario. If we have this back and forth in Congress and don't get Ukraine the funding that they need immediately, and the Russians were able to be victorious in their unlawful invasion, what would happen to those children? What would be what's the prospects of them being reunified under a situation where Russia is able to take over Ukraine because they didn't get help from their democratic friends in the United States and around the world?
If we will not give to us assistance, the Russian Federation will continue occupy our territory, and the numbers of Ukrainian children, of deported Ukrainian children, will grow up immediately. the future of all these children is to be Russians by passport, to be mobilized, to be a member of new exactly Russians military soldiers, and they all will go to the war against Ukraine. You know, we recorded that in Russians prisoners of war in Ukraine, in special camp for Russian prisoners of war, we have people from Crimea. They were children in 2014 when Russia occupied Ukrainian Crimea. So you see the results. It's a structure system of Russian Federation. Occupied territory, take children, grow up new soldiers, and go further to new aggression.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired.
Thank you, Congressman Bisi. And now we're, again, so fortunate to have, can you imagine, an individual born in the Soviet Union, but now a proud acknowledgement born in the Republic of Ukraine. Victoria Sparks of Indiana.
So much, so have my Yankee accent, but let me, I know that, this is issue, and I think, both of you presidents mentioned that, and being from Ukraine and Finland, you know very well, that this is not a new issue. Soviet Union used the same techniques during Stalin times. They uses terror, repressions, and genocide. It happened, with their own people, and it happened with a lot of Ukrainians. Anyone who was not oppressed, they used to put camps during Stalin times to have people who can be succeeding and be compliant in communist propaganda, and also use them as trained to have a bandit class to use to oppress people too. And as you know, Russia is a bandit country. It is became, unfortunately. But what is really, you brought up, I think, Dmitry, is that, they get away with that. There is no punishment there, right? They can do these things, and they never realize there is any repercussions to these acts. And if we are going to have just presentations and resolution, and no one pays the price for that, they can continue doing that. So I think as an international community, we need to think how we can actually have something effective mechanism when we have dictators, when we have oppressors like Stalin, or oppressors like Putin, that they actually cannot get away, and not just them, but people around them that take these commands, because it takes more than just one person. So my questions for you, I think we have, our representative and a great president of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly from Finland, who actually knows very well this issue too. Is there anything we can do as an international community, and Europe, having probably closer mechanism to that, and how we can be helpful to deal with the situation more effectively? And then to Dmitro, my question is, because it's also, you have to build cases and evidence gathering, make sure that if we have hearings, we have really, in any investigation, you have to really convict someone, right, in the crime is proper. There is a way we can look how all evidence can be better organized, and we have a stronger case for this, or how we can be helpful in some other ways, or how is that process is organized, make sure that we can build a strong case, and these people cannot continue getting away with it. So I'll ask our Ms. President first.
Thank you for the question. I think it's self-evident that the people who have committed these crimes have to be held responsible, and of course the International Criminal Court is the right tool for that. But the drawback with that tool is that it takes a long time before the people actually get convicted there, if ever. So it's a question of 10 years, 15 years, and so forth. That is at least what we have learned from the Balkans and how it went. But anyway, we have to stay adamant and have to hold these people responsible. Like you said, President Putin's methods appear to come back from the history and remain the same as they used to be back in time, and they seem to aim at completely destroying the Ukrainian identity, like I said, and at the beginning of my speech. And I think that the only thing we can do at this point is that we continue our support to Ukraine. Soon we will be having a 2-year anniversary since this war broke out, and I think there are many in this room who will agree that the longer this war will rage on, the more difficult it will become in each and individual country to get funds to support Ukraine. And we have even faced this situation in Europe, which is at the core of this very war, because in the European Union there is one country, Hungary, that has been opposing the funds being sent, the European Union funds to be sent to Ukraine. But from the recent news from today that I've heard, fortunately they are having, or there is hope to have a result of that negotiation, so that actually Ukraine will be getting the funds. So the war in the Middle East and raging energy and electricity prices in Europe also are some factors that draw people's attention elsewhere, so that it is up to us international parliamentarians to keep raising our voices about the importance of Ukraine also in our own budgets.
I know that my time expired. Just want to mention something that I just was on some meeting. My colleague said it right. We should help Ukraine to win that war, and not as long as it takes, but as quick as we can, and we can win it quickly. So I think that I'm glad to hear that Europe has similar message, and hopefully will be with action. I'm sorry, my time is expired, but if you, Chairman, just give 10 seconds, maybe made something, I would appreciate that. You know, just if you have something to add, Dmitro.
Of course, I have. Thank you for question. You know, really, I don't believe that we will have a new resolution, a new convention, and Russian will return Ukrainian children back. Sorry, Russia does not respect to international humanitarian law. We must understand this. We need to have something concrete. Russian Federation and Putin understand only the effective, real mechanism of reaction for this aggression, sanction, but the real sanctions. That you can, for example, recognize the Russian Federation as a country who supports terrorism. That it means that no one can buy Russians oil and gas. This will be strong, not simply message. This is mechanism of stopping and blocking of developing Russian economy. Something like this we should to take against Russian Federation. And again, now, as the Ombudsman of Ukraine, I see only one real mechanism of protection rights of Ukrainians on the whole territory of Ukraine is strong, powerful Ukrainian army. Only liberation of whole Ukrainian territory can protect the rights of people who still live on temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Civilian hostages, at least 28,000, including leaders of church communities, journalists, representatives of NGOs, pro-Ukrainian people. And even now, when we have this discussion, I know that someone of Ukrainian people under torture in Russian Federation. We should to understand this is the real threats and real aggression, not against Ukraine, against the whole democratic world. We're still waiting of assistance of the United States of America. We need it. If not, on the nearly weeks or even days, it will be new territory under occupation by Russian army. Thank you.
And thank you, Congresswoman Victoria Sparks, truly a champion for the people of Ukraine And now we have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is a champion for children worldwide.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. If both of you would respond to this, which is the horror of reprogramming the children and how devastating that is to keep them from reuniting with their family members. What can we do? My legislation focuses on sanctions for the programming genocide, where their minds are changed and they don't believe that their family loves them anymore, that they have given them away. And then the last point is to respond to the Russians growing them, if you will, like a farm team. We use that in baseball here in the United States to get them prepared to fight in Russia's dastardly, dangerous, and illegal wars. If you would comment on that and how the world allies, our allies, can be helpful. Madam President, I'd like you to comment. The last thing you'd like to see as a parent is for your child to reject you or to not recognize you because they have been reprogrammed.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee, for that very important but also very difficult question. I think we will need all the forces in the world in order to repatriate and also reprogram those children once we get those back home, because they will need all our help so that they will be feeling loved and accepted when they come back home. I have been myself a foster mother for a number of years in the past, and I know that it is very difficult for a child who has been rejected by her or his parents to recognize that there are people in the world who accept this person as he or she is, and that she has the right to live and the right to achieve happiness in the world. So I think we will need a lot of funds also in the government budgets in order to have professional expertise so that these people will actually be able to live a normal life once they are returned.
Yes. What about the getting them to be programmed to go to war on behalf of Russia?
I agree that we should to unite our efforts for protection Ukrainian children. But again, what we can do, we should to recognize all activities of Russian Federation as genocide. We should to provide a new stage of sanctions. We should to have a special maybe team, maybe from with representatives of the United States of America, who can provide more effective OSCE system to try to find all Ukrainian children on Russian territory. We should to create rehabilitation centers for children that we will return or now returned in Ukraine. We should to have some special foundation and budget, for new efforts, how we will push for Russian side for changing this this position, not to return Ukrainian children back. And again, we suppose that the United States of America will be leadership on this procedure too. Please support peace formula of our presidents. The United States can be the co-chair country too with Canada and with Norway for point number 4. You can use your cooperation with different countries who can in different ways to push for Russian side. But I know that we can't wait. We don't have a time. The children very quickly grow up and this is the problem. Thank you.
Well, let me, in the 4 seconds, just say that we should push for H.R. 5800, the Olazonder-Ivanov Act, maybe to tie into the funding, because this is exactly what you need done, and particularly require the Secretary of State to submit to the appropriate congressional committees and the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe, referred to as the U.S. Helsinki Commission, a report on the United States' efforts for the reintegration of Ukrainian children affected by the war against Ukraine, launched by Russians, including a description of any such efforts to draw world support by the rebuilding and redevelopment of the Ukrainian education system and the implementation of mental health programs to address trauma and family separations among such Ukrainian children. So we should be a partner to you in regaining these children, regaining their minds. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. And Madam President, Commissioner, thank you. And we'll now proceed to panel 2. And again, thank both of you, and we appreciate the video presentations too on behalf of the people of Ukraine. And so we will now proceed with our second panel, and I'd like to first recognize Mr. Mikula Kaliba, who is the director of Save Ukraine and the former Ukrainian Presidential Commissioner for Human Rights. Currently, Save Ukraine is providing assistance to orphans, children with disabilities, and low-income families affected by the war in Ukraine, and is conducting evacuation operations of Ukrainian children who have been forcibly taken to Russia or Russian-controlled areas of Ukraine. And then we will be proceeding to hear from 3 brave survivors. These survivors who were abducted as children, but now are very talented and bright young adults who wanted courageously to share their story publicly. It is so sadly clear that an extraordinary exposure of inhumanity can be described firsthand by courageous survivors who are here today. And so with Rostislav, with Denis, with Ksenia, we want to welcome the young people who are here today. We are so grateful for your willingness to be here to share your stories with the world. Your personal experiences are so extremely valuable. It's such a important part to hear from people who have survived, who know firsthand the horrors of being kidnapped. And with that, in fact, too, the people of Russia need to know that the kidnapping, the invading of Ukraine will be a tragic legacy defiling the history of the talented people of Russia. Americans in the past have cherished as allies the people of Russia, who we recognize so much the culture of the people of Russia, and we are so grateful in particular to have a Russian-American community that truly makes such a difference for the United States. And with this, indeed, I'd like to recognize Mr. Kubila.
Dear Chairman, Congresswoman, Congressman, I'm Mykola Kuleba, the founder and CEO of Save Ukraine Rescue Network. It is a pleasure to speak with you again in person and with children we returned from Russian captivity. I'm grateful for the support of this commission and for the chance to tell you about ongoing Russian crimes against Ukrainian children. The Russian Federation is committing genocide of the Ukrainian nation by kidnapping our children to Russia and annihilating the Ukrainian identity. They threaten and mistreat our children, but just as alarming is how the Russians weaponize stolen children, teaching them to hate not just Ukraine, but the West. Save Ukraine has rescued 232 children kidnapped from their families and their country as part of Russia's cynical attempt to change facts on the ground. In addition to running this rescue mission, Save Ukraine supports children recovery and reintegration by documenting the war crimes with the national law enforcement, providing the children with their families with a 6-month rehabilitation program that includes psychological, social, and humanitarian support, including housing and food. Running education and empowerment community centers for the children and their families, administering an emergency hotline for immediate assistance. Today we are here because we know there are so many issues that the American people are facing, and we don't want this incredibly important one about Ukraine's future to get lost in the noise. Over 19,000 children still need to be brought back home and reintegrated into society after their traumatic experience in Russia or in the occupied territories. But this figure is an estimate. No one knows the real number of displaced children. Both words and actions of Russia officials indicate the intent to separate Ukrainian children permanently from their families, their national and ethnic group, and thereby annihilate their Ukrainian identity. Russia's Commissioner for Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, bragged about 750,000 Ukrainian children being forcibly transferred. Russian officials openly expressed the intent to have the transferred Ukrainian children educated in the Russian language, adopted in the Russian families, and turned into Russian citizens. The important thing is that these children are being indoctrinated with hate and weaponized as each day passes. The war is still going on, and the abducted children are still in danger. We at Save Ukraine have heard again and again from rescued children about Russia's clear and systematic plan to destroy Ukrainian identity. Children are forced to listen to Russian propaganda and false narratives about Ukraine. Children are not allowed to speak the Ukrainian language and forced to attend Russian language, literature, and history classes. Children are forced to listen to the Russian anthem regularly. Teenagers are recruited into Russian youth military movements in preparation to become soldiers to fight against Russia's enemies, Ukraine and the West. A 15-year-old young man we rescued was forced to wear a military uniform and attend military classes. We must also understand that Russia is committing genocide in the occupied territories of Ukraine. The Russians have created unbearable conditions for Ukraine in the occupied territories, so the families are begging us to help them live there. We have evidence that the torture and abuse that Ukrainians are subjected to under the rule of the occupiers is many times more terrible than in Russia itself. Here is just one example. One boy showed a negative attitude towards the occupation authorities in his village, and the child was caught, and his friends' contacts were found in his phone. Then both teenagers were taken to the basement. They were beaten there the whole night. As soon as the parents found out, they came to a place they only listened to the children screaming. Then these children were thrown out of the basement, and they said that the children only have a day to go somewhere. At the same time, parents should stay in the village. The children were given a Russian flag on their avatars and warned that if they will remove them, their parents would be shot. There are the conditions of these children live under every day. After indoctrination, the Russians are making soldiers of Ukrainian children, both those abducted and living in the occupied territories. They use them on the battlefield against their homeland, Ukraine. Russians are creating an army of mercenary, which will be used in all conflicts Russia is taking part in. If could be Middle East or Baltic countries or others, Russians always fight against the US interests and use our children to do it. Russia, together with its allies, has clear intentions to destroy Western democratic values and weaken the US as it was in the USSR. And they use Ukraine and Ukrainian children to do it. The civilized world sent a message that this is okay if we do not stop them. If we do not act now, the risk will only be escalated as more children are taken from their homes and more children will lose their identity living in occupied territories under Russian authority. We are preserving Ukrainian democracy by protecting our children. They are the future of our country. These young people who were kidnapped when they were children are here today to bear witness to Russian crimes through their stories. Our work is far from done. I am grateful to this commission and to the American people for your support, which has been vital. But there are thousands of children still in danger. I urge you to continue support the people of Ukraine and specifically Ukrainians' children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Mykola Kuleba. And indeed, Save Ukraine, it makes such a difference. And I was so grateful to be with you in Kyiv and to meet the young people you were working with and then to see our three very brave individuals who are here today. It's so meaningful to have Dennis and Ksenia and also Rostislav. We would like to hear through with a translator your message to the people of the world.
Вітаю. Мене звати Денис. Мені 18 років. Під час окупації мого міста Херсона мене незаконно вивезли до табору в Крим. До мене додому прийшли військові і почали казати, що я їду. Я почав відмовлятись, а вони відповіли мені, ми нічого не хочемо чути.
Hi, my name is Denis. I'm 18 years old, and when I was living in my hometown Kherson, the Russian soldiers came to our home and told me that I should move to a summer camp. I refused, but they did not listen to me. They forced me to go there.
Мої батьки, які не чують і не говорять, були просто в шоці, адже сперечатися з озброєними військовими не могли.
My parents, who cannot speak and cannot hear, they were shocked, but they could not argue with the military.
Потім нас на автобусах вивезли до Херсонського річкового порту. Обіцяли, що це лише на 2 тижні і ми повернемось додому.
During the night, we were taken by the buses to Kherson River Port. We were told that this is going to last for only 2 weeks.
Нас перевезли на пароплаві в Олешки, де ми понад 3 годин чекали автобуси без їжі, без води. В туалет теж не можна було піти, тому що по всій території була охорона.
We were taken then to a place called Aleshki, where we were sitting for 3 hours without food and water. We were not allowed to leave the place because it was close to the front area.
Керівником табору був колишній український поліцейський Валерій Астахов, котрий втік у 2014 році.
The head of the chief of the summer camp was a former Ukrainian police, which belonged to the special police force, Berkut, and who fought against Ukrainian demonstrators in 2014-2013.
Він казав, що Росія поглине всю Україну, а якщо ти згадаєш щось за Україну на території табору, то збираєш речі і йдеш додому пішки.
He said that Russia is going to conquer the entire Ukraine, and if you're going to say something in favor of Ukraine, you're going to grab your stuff and walk home by foot.
Деяких Астахов збирав на особисті розмови, де психологічно тиснув. Діти вже поверталися після цих розмов зовсім з іншою позицією і не хотіли розповідати, про що розмовляли з Астаховим.
Sometimes he would call out some kids for the so-called special conversations. And after these conversations, the kids were completely changed. They would be silent and they would not tell anybody what they were talking about.
У мене діабет, і коли про це я розповів у медпункті табору, мені відповіли, що чекай, поки ліки зовсім не закінчаться. Через 2-3 дні до мене підходить Астахов та каже, якщо я не підкорюсь Росії, то я просто помру в таборі і мене лікувати ніхто не буде.
I have diabetes, and I said that I'm running out of my medication. They said, wait when the medication runs out, and then we will take care of you. And then at some point, this policeman came to me and said that unless you are going to swear your allegiance to Russia, you're going to die.
Через місяць в мене закінчуються ліки, і мені стає дуже зле, що табору іншого виходу в них не було, і вони викликають мені швидку. Мене відвезли до реанімації в Євпаторії, до якої я добирався декілька годин.
After a month, all my medication ran out, and I became very ill. They had nothing. They had no way to treat me, so they called emergency, and I was taken to another city, Yevpatoria. The very trip lasted for 3 hours.
Через 2-3 дні мене відправили в Сімферополь, тому що в Євпаторії не було лікарів, які лікують мою хворобу. Так я опинився в Сімферополі на 3 тижні.
2 or 3 days later, I was moved to Simferopol because it happened that the hospital in Yevpatoria had no doctors who knew how to treat my disease. So I ended up in Simferopol for 3 weeks.
У грудні 2022-го всіх дітей з табору «Дружба» переселили в Лучистий. В інший табір.
In December 2022, all the kids from the summer camp were moved to another camp.
У лютому 2023 року всіх дітей-студентів відправляли навчатися. Нас не запитували, хочемо чи ми навчатися, хочемо чи цю професію. Нас просто силою відправили навчатися.
In January 2023, we were told that we are going to go to schools, and they didn't ask what kind of schools we would like to go to. We were not asked what kind of profession we would like to learn. They didn't even ask whether we want to go there.
Так я опинився у місті Керч у морському коледжі.
As a result, I ended up in a city of Kerch, in a Navy college, in a Marine college probably.
Коли я туди приїхав, для мене це було незнайоме місце, зовсім нове. Я дуже хвилювався, що тиск піднявся аж 150.
It was a completely new place to me. I knew anybody in this place. It was very difficult to me, and my blood pressure went up to 150.
Так я провчився до кінця навчального року. На той момент мені було 17 років, і в мене постійно вимагали отримати російський паспорт. Я постійно відмовлявся, я не хотів бути громадянином Росії.
Громче говори. Хорошо. So I stayed there until the end of the year, and they were pressuring me all that time to accept Russian citizenship, and I was refusing it every time.
Потім мені подзвонив друг та сказав, що є можливість повернутися додому з організацією Save Ukraine.
Then suddenly I got a call from a friend who told me that I can get back to Ukraine via the organization, the network called Save Ukraine.
Тоді я взяв з російського номера, позвонив на гарячу лінію і попросив про допомогу, що я хочу повернутися додому.
So I called the hotline of Save Ukraine and asked for help to get home.
Через декілька годин зі мною зв'язалися волонтери, і так як на той момент я не бачився з батьками 10 місяців, вони не могли за мною виїхати. Тому ми з командою Save Ukraine почали робити довіреність на маму мого друга.
Given the fact that, so the volunteers from this organization got in touch with me, but given the fact that I haven't seen my parents for 10 months, my friends helped me to get in touch with the mother of a friend of mine who got the authority to represent my interests.
Я, коли дізнався, що вона виїхала вже за нами, я просто стрибав від радощів.
When she came to me, I could not hide my happiness, my joy.
На кордоні до мене причепилися ФСБшники, двічі допитували, двічі перевіряли телефон.
When we were crossing the border, twice we were stopped by the FSB officers who were asking me all kind of questions and checking my cell phone.
На кордоні вже з Україною, коли я побачив просто слово «Україна», я взяв в обійми важку сумку і просто закричав «Слава Україні!».
And once we crossed the border and I saw the word Ukraine, I dropped my heavy bag and started to scream glory to Ukraine.
Thank you so much for your courage. And Dennis, and we now proceed with Ksenia.
Всіх вітаю, мене звати Ксенія, мені 19 років, і я приїхала до вас з України.
I'm Ksenia, I am 19-year-old, and I came here from Ukraine.
У мене є 12-річний брат, молодший Сергій, і ми діти-сироти.
I have a minor brother, and both of us were orphans.
2 роки тому ми потрапили до прийомної родини і жили в маленькому містечку Вовчанськ, до якого росіяни зайшли першим в Харківській області.
2 weeks ago, we ended up with a foster family, or adoptive family, and we were living in a small town called Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region, Kharkiv Oblast.
У нас почалося життя під постійними обстрілами, і ми мусили ховатися під підлогою власного житла, бо іншого сховища в нас не було. І на вулицях постійно ходили росіяни в військовій формі, стояли їхні блокпости разом з технікою.
And when the war started, the shelling began, incessant shelling began. We were hiding in the cellar because there was no other shelter to hide. And the Russian military started to patrol the streets.
Ми жили в постійній атмосфері, ми жили в страху за наше життя.
And we lived in a permanent fear for our lives.
Влітку 2022 року, в кінці літа 2022 року, ми були вимушено переміщені до Росії.
In the end of the summer of 22, we were forced to move to Russia.
Мене відправили на навчання, а мого молодшого брата забрали до літнього табору на відпочинок.
I was sent to school, and my little brother was sent to a summer camp for rest and recreation.
На той момент я ніколи не могла подумати, що мене розлучать з братом на цілих 9 місяців, і ці 9 місяців опиняться для мене найстрашнішими 9 місяцями в моєму житті.
At that point, I could never fathom that I'm going to be separated from my little brother for 9 months And these 9 months were the most horrible 9 months of my life.
Через декілька місяців від початку мого навчання мене вигнали з гуртожитку, а причиною стало те, що я відказалася отримувати російське громадянство, відказалася отримувати їхні виплати, але ж росіяни робили будь-що, аби я стала їхньою громадянкою.
Several months later, I was kicked out from the school because I refused to take the Russian citizenship and continue my allegiance to Ukraine.
Весь час до мого повернення я жила в своєї знайомої.
And from that moment on, all the time, I lived in a place of a friend of mine.
Тим часом мій брат пробув в таборі 5 тижнів, після чого його забрали в прийомну родину, в російську прийомну родину, де він був весь цей час.
After 5 weeks spent in the summer camp, my brother was taken to a Russian adoptive family where he was staying.
Я знала, де він знаходиться, я підтримувала з ним контакт, і якось під час однієї з розмов я спитала, чи хоче він поїхати зі мною назад до України, якщо буде можливість, і він сказав, що дуже хоче, бо в нього там друзі, і взагалі це Україна, він би хотів.
I knew where he was, so I was managing to get in touch with him from time to time, and I kept telling him that whenever I find out how to get back to Ukraine, I would like to come back, and he said that he would like to come back too because all his friends and everything he cares about are in Ukraine.
І тоді я зрозуміла, що я мушу будь-яким способом потрапити назад до України і дала собі тверду обіцянку, що повернусь лише тільки з братом.
And I promised myself, I made a pledge that I'm going to go back to Ukraine and I'm going to come back with my little brother.
Я почала шукати різні способи і суто випадково дізналася про мережу порятунку Save Ukraine, яка допомогла мені зробити документи на брата, допомогла повністю з поїздкою і забиранням його.
I started to look for ways to get back, and I found this network, Save Ukraine, who helped me to prepare paperwork for my brother and to help us both to get back.
Звучить наче легко просто поїхати забрати брата, але на той момент росіяни почали психологічно тиснути на мого брата, казати, що він нікому не потрібен, що назад до України він не поїде, і в Україні немає майбутнього, і взагалі орудують нацисти.
However, my brother went under very hard pressure. Russians kept telling him that that nobody cares about him in Ukraine. There is no future in Ukraine, and Ukraine is run by Nazis.
Я не стала звертати на їхні слова і на їхні дії з їхнього боку, то просто вирушила за братом.
But I kept arguing and telling that this was not true.
Коли я вже приїхала на місце, нам дали змогу порозмовляти з братом, але перед цим мене попередили про те, що він відмовляється їхати, і мені доведеться його вмовляти.
However, and when I finally had a chance to see my brother, I was told that he refuses to go back to Ukraine and that I have a chance to talk to him.
Я розмовляла з братом декілька годин, і за ці декілька годин я намагалася йому пояснити, що якщо зараз він зі мною не повернеться, то, ймовірно, він залишиться назавжди в Росії, і ми не зможемо бути разом.
It took me several hours to explain to my brother that if he's not going to come back with me now, he's going to stay in Russia forever, and we will never be able to be together again.
Через деякий час у нього перепитала, чи хоче він все ж таки поїхати, і він все ж таки погодився.
Several hours later, I managed to convince him, and he agreed to come back with me.
Незважаючи на виснажливу дорогу і страх, що ми мусимо залишитися жити в Росії, ми все ж таки дісталися України, отримали всю необхідну допомогу, і по приїзду ми повернулися до нормального життя.
The way back was very hard. There were many difficulties, but we wanted to get back, and thanks to the assistance which we received, we came back to Ukraine and began a new life.
Я хочу нагадати, що більше 19 тисяч дітей було вивезено насильно до Росії, і з кожним днем Росія продовжує це чинити. І також хочу подякувати Америці за те, що вона допомагає нам, нашій країні, в цій війні.
I would like, in the end, I would like to remind you that 19,000 Ukrainian kids were taken out, brought to Russia, and that I also would like to thank the United States for helping Ukraine to stand in this war.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. And we're having votes, and so I look forward to hearing from Rostislav. But Ksenia, what a wonderful sister you are. So it should always be remembered. And in the interest of time, I certainly want to hear Rostislav, and I regret that we won't have time for questions. But hey, your testimony is more important than anything we could ask. God bless you. And Rostislav.
Вітаю, мене звати. Вітаю, мене звати Ростислав, і зараз мені 18 років.
I'm Rostislav, and I'm 18-year-old.
Коли моє село ще окупували, моєї бабусі не витримало серце, і вона померла.
When our village was occupied by Russians, my grandma had a heart attack and she died.
Наступний день приїхали росіяни та забрали мою маму в лікарню. Вона мала давнє психічне захворювання.
My mother had a long mental disease, so the next day Russians came and took my mother to a hospital.
На той момент мені стало дуже сильно страшно.
And I was really scared.
Наступні 4 місяці я прожив в окупації, було мало їжі, коштів.
For the next 4 months I lived alone under occupation regime. There was no much food or money.
Потім після 9 класу я знайшов підробіток поратись на городі у знайомих.
And after I graduated the 9th grade, I started to work at the orchard of my friends.
Потім, коли росіяни зрозуміли те, що я залишився один,
Once Russians realized that I was alone,
на наступний день вони приїхали і сказали, що треба мені їхати вчитись, але я відмовився.
they came to my place, to my house, and said that I need to go to Russia to study. I said no.
Коли я відмовився, вони почали мені погрожували і казали те, що якщо я не поїду, то вони мене відвезуть невідомо куди, якийсь інтернет.
When they started to threaten me, and they said that if I'm not going to go to Russia willingly, they're going to take me somewhere else, unspecified place, and live there.
На наступний день вони приїхали та відвезли мене в Херсон.
The next day they came again and took me to the city of Kherson.
В Херсоні я провчився десь місяць.
I spent there studying about a month.
Потім сказали те, що треба їхати в табір, нібито на 2 неділі.
And then they said that I need to go to a summer camp, allegedly for 2 weeks.
Так як в мене не було вибору, те, що в мене нікого не було, то мені обов'язково треба було їхати.
Since I had no choice and I was alone, I had no option but to go.
Мене відвезли в табір, в Євпаторію, в Дружбу.
They brought me to a summer camp, Druzhba, in the city of Yevpatoria in Crimea.
Там треба було співати російський гімн. Якщо ти цього не робив, то тебе карали.
And they were supposed to sing their Russian national anthem, and if you would refuse, you would be punished.
Перший раз, якщо ти не співав, то ти писав доповідну, на наступний раз з тобою розмовляв Астахов, наглядач табору.
For the first time, when you could not catch up with the words, they would make you a stern warning. But the second time, you would need to have a conversation with this Mr. Astapov, who was the former policeman and the head of this summer camp.
На третій раз тебе саджали в ізолятор. Ізолятор – це кімната 2х2, в якому є ліжко і все в решітках. Тебе нікуди не випускають, телефони не можна.
And for the third time, if you do not sing the anthem, they put you into a cell, which is 2 by 2 meters, with the window covered by grill, and no telephone, no contacts.
Я там був 4 рази, це загалом 15 діб.
I was there 4 times. Altogether, it was 35 days.
Я в цьому таборі пробув 2 місяці, потім нас зібрали та сказали те, що ми їдемо в інший табір.
So I spent in this camp 2 months, and then they told us that they are going to move us to a different camp.
Нас відвезли в Лучисте, і там по факту все те саме було, а приїжджала ще якась комісія.
So the new camp was in the place called Luciste. The conditions were the same. However, there was some kind of commission which kept visiting this camp.
Я там пробув 1,5 місяця, потім нас зібрали всіх студентів, які знаходились в таборі, і сказали, що треба їхати вчитись.
I spent there a month and a half, and then all the schoolboys, who were there, they told us that we are supposed to go somewhere to study.
Нас не запитували, на кого ми хочемо вчитись, нам сказали те, що ви їдете і все.
They didn't ask us questions, what would you like to study, where would you like to study, they just said, you're gonna go.
Так я потрапив в Керчь, в морське училище.
So I ended up in the same Navy school in Kerch.
Там
Sailor school.
Там теж треба було співати російський гімн. Говорили те, що треба робити російський паспорт, але я сказав те, що його робити не буду, я збираюсь повертатись до України.
They also forced us to sing Russian national anthem there, and they kept us telling that we need to take Russian citizenship, and I kept refusing, saying that my intention is to go back to Ukraine.
Потім я дізнався те, що мені зробили свідоцтво про народження російське, але я його порвав.
Then I realized that they changed my birth certificate. They made it a Russian birth certificate, as if I were born in Russia, so I destroyed it.
Потім вони зробили ще одне і забрали у мене українське.
Then they produced another one and took away my Ukrainian birth certificate.
Потім я дізнався те, що моїй мамі зробили російський паспорт, яка не розуміла те, що відбувається.
Then I realized that my mother, who was not aware about what was going on because she was mentally ill, she also became a Russian citizen.
Вони постійно говорили те, що мені потрібно робити паспорт, те, що це обов'язково, але я говорив те, що я його робити не буду.
They kept telling me that you got to get a Russian citizenship and this is obligatory, and I kept saying no.
Я там пробув 5 місяців, потім мого друга мама дізналась про благодійний фонд Save Ukraine і вирушила за нами. Коли вона приїхала,
I spent there 5 months, and then a mother of a friend of mine, she learned about this network Save Ukraine, and she went to pick me up. When she came,
я зібрав речі, думав те, що мене заберуть, але вони мене не відпустили.
I immediately collected my stuff, and I thought that they will let me go, but they did not allow me to go.
Вони поїхали, я залишився. Потім, коли гуртожиток закривався, мене відправили в дитячий реабілітаційний центр.
Instead, when the dormitory was closed, they sent me to a children rehabilitation center.
Я там пробув 2 місяці, там не можна було користуватися телефонами, тебе не випускали, тільки вранці і ввечері.
I spent there 2 months, and it was the life when you were not allowed to use telephone, you were not allowed to go out. They would let you out only early morning or in the evening.
Їжа була жахлива, умови теж були жахливі.
The food was horrible, and the conditions were horrible as well.
Потім, коли гуртожиток відчинився, мене перевезли в гуртожиток. Я провчився місяць.
And when the dormitory was reopened again, they moved me back to the dormitory, where I spent a month.
Потім я просто звідти втік. Як саме я втік, я розповісти цього не можу.
And then I run away. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you the details of the way I run away.
Хочу нагадати те, що 19 тисяч дітей ще залишилось на території Росії. Хочу подякувати Америці те, що вона допомагає Україні.
I would like to remind you that 19,000 other Ukrainian kids are still in Russia, and I would like to thank the United States for the assistance it provides to Ukraine.
Rostislav, thank you for your courage, and Ksenia and Dennis, the three of you are real superstars on behalf of the people of Ukraine, and so it shall always be cherished. And I want to thank Mykola. The American people need to look up about Save Ukraine, how you've saved children, saved their lives, and hey, as the grandfather of my three oldest grandchildren, it could be right there. God bless you. God bless Ukraine. We must be adjourned.
Thank you all very much.
It's okay, we still how many votes we have? How many do we have? 182. We still have 182, okay. We have 182, let's go. It's okay. They're waiting for us. You guys.